Hey, back again. Definitely one of those days where I slept poorly and woke up, well, was sick the day before. I still think I'm sick. I'm not sure what I exactly have, but uh, just taking things a little bit easier and getting rest. It seems to be helping. Yeah. So today I kind of ended up jumping fully into this network refactor. Um, it ended up being a bit more than I thought I was getting myself into. Uh, but on the bright side of things, it's a pretty good. I really like where it's going. Um, it's coming out really, really, really nice to the point where I'm actually excited to work on more networked based things, which all of this will be. So I'm glad that it went from something I was like, oh god, I don't want to touch that, to like, oh, I'm excited. So that alone made this whole session worth it. And I ended in a really good spot as well, to where most of all the big changes have been made. Now I just need to tune a couple things with rendering. That's about it. Yeah, just tune a couple things with rendering, change a few names here and there to reconnect it, because it's just, small name change or move to a different class. Nothing big needs to be changed at this point with the network refactor. So surprisingly productive despite my current state. I found what really helped me was not getting kind of caught up in my head with different parts, because there'd be a part that I could see that needed to be changed, or that a change was about to happen with it. And it was very easy to kind of roll back into the back of my head and be like, oh god, if I change that, then that part might change, and this, right? Or like, is that actually going to be there? Like, just different things, that worst case scenarios, essentially. And just being able to pull back out of that and work on whatever I already made sense of, or going to investigate the parts that I needed to make sense of, and then only taking steps when it was very clear that, like, yep, this has very good reasons for these things to happen, or these changes to be made. Once those were lined up, it's pretty straightforward to just go through the motions, get the parts changed that need to be changed, kind of follow that line of logic through, and until everything's kind of lined up where it needs to be. And so that, yeah, pretty happy with how things are going with that. With refactoring in general, it's something where there's kind of these core principles that can help you kind of guide you through it. What Another thing that really helped me was, I feel like I had a very strong direction, and it was something that I didn't kind of pull out of thin air like right when I started. It was something that I had written down the other day after running into different issues. I tried to really boil it down into what are the issues. I didn't immediately jump to a conclusion on what the solution would be, but I just really kind of clearly outlined that, and then kind of the direction that that seems like I need to kind of go in, but not too many specifics. But yeah, I let that sit, and then when I came back to it, then it was a matter of, okay, does that still hold up? What might this look like? What can I really justify these parts here and there? Let's move this. Let's move this thing here. Let's see if that goes well. And yeah, yeah. Like I said, I'm pretty happy with how things went. Pretty happy. Not sure what else to really talk about, to be honest. Once you have those things and there's like system to do the refactoring, it's just a matter of just sitting down and doing it. It's a little bit like busy work, but there's definitely a very strong creative element to it in terms of problem solving. Also, it's not really arbitrary work. It's definitely not busy work. I might have just contradicted myself, but I don't think it's busy work. There's real value in it. It's just you don't really see any immediate return on investment for features. That's more of a longer term thing, which I kind of opened with. I was like, okay, I went from not wanting to do networking stuff to I'm excited to do more. And yeah, once again, like that makes this whole thing worth it. Yeah, so I guess I'll get into some gritty details. Oh, here's a good part that I ran into. So I noticed that this weird hacky solution that I had set up to kind of get some quick progress and make some like demoable but definitely not shippable features, which made sense to do, and I'm probably still going to make it work like that now. I ended up, and this might have been something I've noticed in hindsight, but I ended up making like the structure of the code like best reflect that, or like best support that weird part. And instead of letting it stand out as the weird hacky thing that it is. So the structure of the code was very bizarre. Yeah, very bizarre. There was kind of this weird... There's this weird sort of interweaving of the game logic with like just like network data in a lot of different places. It ended up being a lot more insidious than I thought it would be. And so pulling on that thread was the main thing that I was doing. And everywhere that it led me, I'm really happy with the change that it made. It was relatively easy to make that change, just a little bit of forethought. Once again, being sure of the change before making the change, but not through like deliberation in your brain, but rather just exploring the options firsthand, seeing the trade-offs, being able to really make a solid call and not have to make too much guesswork. If I found myself making too much guesswork of a different part, I just moved on. I kind of made it an analogy to, you have a box of cables, they're all a rope that's all kind of jumbled up, and you're trying to pick it apart and get it all where it needs to be. And if you grab on one piece and you just try to yank it out, right, it doesn't always go well. More often than not, it goes poorly. So when you start meeting some resistance, it's probably good to just move on to a different part. Either like fairly relevant to that part, or even just kind of, just anything else, rather than just yanking on that one piece. Because it can go pretty poorly. You can end up kind of putting yourself in a bad situation, and both like with code and emotionally. So doing that helped a lot. You feel kind of frantic and frazzled when doing that, though. So what helped me through that was breaking parts that I wanted to be broken. That way I get the little error that shows up there. That way I have to come back and fix it and revisit it. And leaving comments when I needed to. More often than not, I could just break apart, and I knew that like that's kind of all the information I needed. Which really speaks to the value of this sort of compile time statically typed sort of language, where you can break things like that, and as long as you put everything back together where there's no errors, and you're careful with like data like references, then you can hit run and it works, right? You might run into like one or two weird anomalies, but more or less it works. So yeah, I'm happy that I'm doing this in C# and not JavaScript, for example. I've definitely had some nightmare development days with doing some refactors in JavaScript. I don't want to relive those. I'm happy to avoid them. If you have any war stories, post them in the comments. Yeah.